Hello, BookTube. The subject of where to find time to read has come up on our little corner of BookTube just today, and I find this subject irresistible, so I thought I would weigh in on it, especially since the answers are simple. The answers to this question are not complex. They do not involve complicated plans. They do not involve any kind of hack. They are simple. They have been true forever, with a few modern variations. There are 4 ways that you can read more, with a caveat that I want to be careful to add at the end about the goal. Way number 1 is to make time to read. Make time in your life to read. Nothing that you want to do is just going to happen organically. I don't know if you've noticed this. Maybe you're only 8, but nothing that you want to do is just going to happen in your life organically. You need to make time. You have to put it forward to do. If you're telling yourself, I really want to write that novel that's been percolating inside me forever, well, it's never going to be easy. And it's never going to just organically happen. If I had a dime for every time I heard someone say, well, the minute I retire, for whatever plan it is, and I always want to, it would be gruesome to say, but I always want to say to them, yeah, the minute you retire, you're going to take the golf clubs out for a nice game where you don't have to think about the office, and that's where you're going to die, right on that day. So don't put it off. No one is guaranteed a minute. The only way that book is going to get written, or that marathon is going to get run, or whatever it is, that language is going to get learned, is if you make the time to do it. And it has to be regular time or it's wasted. You are building a groove in your brain. You are creating a new habit. That takes time to do, and it takes work to upkeep. So thing number 1 is to make the time to read. If you don't do that, then what's the point of talking about any of the rest of it? Number 2 would be to pick the books you like. It does no good for you to prioritize reading and make time to read if you're picking the wrong books. If the books are fighting against you, it wouldn't matter if you had all the time in the world. It still wouldn't be any good. And when I say pick the books you like, I don't necessarily mean pick the books you love. I don't necessarily mean just reading your sweet tooth forever and only that. If you want to do that, fine. That's we're only here once, no matter what religious people say. We're only here once. If you want to do that, that's just fine. But there are levels of liking. There are levels of difficulty in books that you can come to like, but you won't like them. They're not as easy as falling out of bed. You need to like them, but not necessarily love them until you find that gradually you are loving them. It's a complicated gray area, I'll admit, but the last thing you should do here, regardless of the gray area, is load yourself down with books that you don't actually like, that you don't actually want to read. I know some people who did manage to make the time to read and said, yeah, I'm going to read an improving book. I'm going to read improving books. I'm not going to waste my time with trash. I'm going to look at what Harvard University says or Caltech says about the list of books I should be reading, and I'm going to read them, whether I'm enjoying them or not. I'm all for giving any kind of book a long leash to please you, but ultimately you should be reading what you want. That will increase the amount you read. That will make it easier for you to read more. Step number 3 is to eliminate distractions. And when I'm giving these 4 points over the last 250 years, that has always been one of my 4 steps, is to eliminate distractions. But oh boy, for most of the decades when I was giving this advice, I certainly had nothing in mind like the distraction landscape we live in today. I couldn't have imagined it in my most dystopian nightmares. I couldn't have imagined anything worse than the distractions that I was talking about in the 60s and all through the 70s and all through the 80s and all through the 90s, which is the TV on in the room, the radio on, I would argue music, but also kids running around or people in the room or whatever. You will know what legitimately distracts you from reading. And I have always found this particularly mystifying, that you would know what distracts you and not get out of its way, even though you know that if you're distracted, you'll do less reading and enjoy the reading less. I have never understood that. I have seen it happen so many times, not just with reading, with any of these tasks that you're thinking, gee, I want that to happen, keep in mind thing number one. It's not going to happen organically. You need to make it happen. You need to actually do it, or it will not get done. It's true for any of them, but it certainly applies to reading. If you're in the middle of a living room with people bawling for your attention all the time, phones ringing, the TV on, the radio blasting, you're going to be distracted. And that is going to decrease how much you read. That's what I said for all of those decades. I never even imagined the 21st century. Honestly, legitimately, it did not occur to me that I would be alive in the 21st century. But the 21st century is built on distraction. There are gigantic, multi-billion-dollar industries whose entire business agenda, their whole business model, is to distract you. They want to be the thing you get distracted with. You concentrating on something is alien to that business model. And so you won't find it anywhere. You just won't find it anywhere. You'll find just the opposite all around you. With the result that I think you can see, probably in yourself, but certainly in the people that you know, which is the erosion of the ability to concentrate. Who do you know who can concentrate on one thing for an hour at a time? Anything. Anyone and anything. I'm not saying reading here. I'm saying anything. When's the last time you saw someone concentrate on one thing to the exclusion of all else for an hour? It's unbelievably rare now, and it is hunted by these multi-billion-dollar corporations that we allow into every minute of our waking life. Thanks to the technology that we have. We have smart technology, we have phones, we have smart TVs, we have all that sort of thing. Letting these companies in, whose only goal is to distract you from whatever it is you would be doing that isn't watching them. They want your eyeballs on them 24 hours a day. So when I get to the step number 3, which is eliminate distractions, I have a lot more to talk about and a harder row to hoe, because in addition to saying, well, if you read better in quiet and solitude, then you're going to have to make that happen. You're going to have to carve out that space and those conditions in order to read. You can't just wait for them to happen. Any more here than in number 1. You can't wait for it to happen. You have to make it happen. In addition to that, now I have the uphill battle of severing the umbilical cord with all of you people, which is to say, the phone can't be there. And obviously, you should not have ping notifications on any device. Your devices should not speak to you. They are designed to Pavlovianly condition you, and they do. They do. As you can tell, because even if you have your notifications off on your phone, if you hear a ping go off in a crowded subway car, you and everybody else responds instantly and exactly the same. That's conditioning. And that needs to go. That is the apps on your device, all of which are built on the business model of distracting you, reaching out from your device to distract you in the real world. And you've given it the power to do that. You must take that power away. I'm sorry if you think you're indispensable. You're not. Go through your iPad and your phone, go into your settings and disable notifications on everything. All of it. Never mind this business of you harried 30-something parents saying, well, what if the kids need me? They don't. They hate you. They're not going to need you. When's the last time they did? They can get you. Anyone can reach you at any time. Turn off the notifications on everything. Just that is at the least you can do to reclaim your distraction from all of the multi-billion-dollar corporations that now want a piece of it. You have to sever that umbilical cord. It's deadly to reading. Simple as that. Which means that if, for instance, you read on a tablet, well, that you're making it trickier, because every part of the lizard part of your brain knows perfectly well that an endless amount of distractions are right there on the same device. I think that's why Kindles are so popular. Kindles and Kobos have a technical beta capacity for accessing the internet, but it's cumbersome. It's designed so that you don't do it. And I think that's why people like it, because the device is not giving you any options for distraction. That's thing number 3, is you have to eliminate distractions. Reading is a concerted, silent, intensely personal activity. And we live in an era that has put a bullseye on the back of intense, long personal activities. So you're fighting upstream against all the imperatives of your own era, but you have to do it if you want to read more. And thing number 4, I always end on this one. It's always tricky to do. It frustrates people. But it's my old friend, subvocalizing. If you want to read more, you almost have to stop subvocalizing. You almost have to stop doing it. All the things that I've listed are vital. This one is vital too. And by subvocalizing, if you are new to this channel, new to this video, and you don't know what I'm talking about, most people learn to read orally as little children. Most people can say the stories that they love before they know how to read those stories. And most people in grade school are taken through reading as an oral thing, as an oral activity. And that holds over into adulthood, so that you almost certainly subvocalize when you read, which means you're looking at a page of text and you're saying it silently in your head. If you take a step back and look at how you read, you'll almost certainly find that you do that. And you don't need to. Just because your grade school linked those two does not mean they are actually linked. They actually aren't. You don't need to subvocalize in order to read. And when you subvocalize, you are yoking yourself to the speed at which you can formulate the words as if you were going to say them out loud. Well, you must know that doubles or even triples the amount of time to get through those words. And the reason that you know that is because you don't always subvocalize. Not with every bit of reading. You don't do it. Just look at all the little things in your life, all the little things that weren't covered in school, and so you aren't trained to subvocalize them. You are parking a car. You look at a sign that has, let's say, a dozen rules. You take it in visually. You don't subvocalize that. You're not reading that to yourself. And it's much faster. It's much, much faster. You are waiting for a very important form letter in the mail, let's say, from the tax revenue people or a college you've applied to or something like that. When you get that letter and open it, you're not subvocalizing the contents. You're seeing the contents and processing them in your brain. You're not speaking them in between those two things. You don't need to do that with your reading either, with prose. It isn't necessary to do. And it will turbocharge the amount that you can read. That is not a false promise. That is not a grifter thing. It will double or triple your reading speed when you are no longer yoking it to saying all the words. And the only problem is the perennial frustration that when I've told people like this and they've said, "Oh my God, I never realized it, but you're right, I do this." The only problem that I hear over and over again is frustration, because people recognize that they're subvocalizing, try to stop, and inevitably call me on the phone once upon a time and now email me and say, "I did it and I didn't remember a single thing. It was like I hadn't even looked at the page. I had to go back over it again 10 times. Or I crawled through." What are you talking about? That not subvocalizing is going to speed up my reading. It slowed it down enormously. I was crawling through. I couldn't remember one sentence to the next. That frustration is not the fault of subvocalizing or the lack of subvocalizing. It's the fault of training. Obviously, as I've had to say to many, many people over the decades, you've been in this habit for 30, 40, 50 years. You can't expect to get rid of it overnight. It's going to take time. You have to build the grooves of a new habit. And this one's an old habit. This is almost universal. People learn to subvocalize at school and just don't think about it. They just keep doing it. It takes time to uproot a habit like that. You have to give yourself a little leeway, is my PS to part number 4. You will read a lot more if you don't subvocalize, but learning to stop subvocalizing takes time. You're an adult and you have more self-awareness than you did as a little kid, so it won't take as much time, but it will take some time. But those are the 4 things. You have to make the time to read. You have to pick the right books. You have to eliminate distractions, and you have to eliminate subvocalizing. If you do those things, you will read a lot more than you do now. Where, in the worst case scenario, you are subvocalizing everything. You don't pay any attention to straining out distractions. You pick books that you think are good for you or that you think are popular that other people are reading instead of what you actually want to read, and you don't prioritize the action itself. It's the same thing as walking or talking. I don't need to prioritize it. Everybody does it. It'll happen naturally. It will not. It will not happen naturally. When I say those 4 things, I want to add a couple of addenda here at the end. One, P.S., is that reading more is not a moral imperative. It's not the be-all and end-all. If you're happy with how much you're reading, then ignore everything that I've just said and just keep doing what you're doing. This advice is aimed at people who are not happy with how much they read and want to read more. But this is not a race. This is not a contest. It's not like the better readers read more. I hope that is obvious, but over the years, sometimes when I've had these conversations, it has not been. Especially since I'm the one having the conversation, and usually I'm having it with someone who knows that I read a lot. Nevertheless, the people who say, oh, you only read so many pages a month or so many books a month or whatnot, the people who say that with disdain in their voice are a-holes. Their opinions mean nothing. You should not only disregard their opinions, but work real hard to uproot and displace them from your life. It's only snobs who say that. So the PS number one here is that you can just ignore all this advice if you're happy with the speed at which you read. This is only for people who are not. The people who are not happy with how much they read have, in my experience, inevitably been the reason why they don't read more. Inevitably. In my life, I've heard lots and lots of people say to me, I would read more, but I simply don't have the time. The clock has so many hours on it, and in those hours, I am needed every single minute of all that time. And when people have said that to me over the decades, people who were in business world, people who were in management, people who were in politics, when people have said that to me, my response from eons ago to now has always been the same. Bullshit. That is simply not true. And I know this because I have challenged hundreds of people over the decades. Okay, you keep saying that to me. And believe me, I'm aware of the implicit criticism of me when you say that. But you keep saying that to me. How about you let me look around in your life? And over the decades, I've had people dumb enough to do that. And what do I find? Inevitably, I find vast open tundras of time that are spent on other things. I have never had that not be true. Not once. Not one time when someone says to me, I'm going full throttle from the instant I wake up until the instant I go to sleep every single day of my life. I literally do not have even 15 seconds to read. Inevitably, 100% of the time when someone has told me that, they have been wrong. Inevitably. You do have time to read. This leads to the second PS that I want to make here, which is connected with the point that I was making at the beginning, which is that this isn't going to happen. It isn't just going to happen on its own. The reason why I make that point, and the reason why I say that the people who claim that they don't have any time at all are simply lying, they're simply wrong about that. The reason why I say that, if you know someone who says, look, I would read more, but I literally don't have 2 minutes. The reason they're telling that lie, and believe me, it's a lie, they know perfectly well how much Skyrim they play. They know perfectly well that they are lying when you catch them simply vegging out and they say, I am just burned out, I need time to just... They know perfectly well what they're saying and that it's not accurate, but the reason that they say it is because of the reason that I said at the beginning of this video, which is that they think it's just going to happen. It's just going to happen organically. I'm not going to build anything towards it. I'm not going to create this new thing that I want. Instead, I'm just going to wait, and sooner or later, it will be natural. That's someone looking for a hack. They might not call it that. They might not think of it that way, but that's what they're doing. They're looking for a way to get the result without the effort. And that's the second PS that I want to end here, this discussion with, is that this has been true of humans for 8,000 years at least. This has been true forever. Of people knowing the answer to their question. The question of why can't I? They know the answer and they just don't want to do it. That's all. That's as simple as that. So they pretend that the answer is not clear. But the answer is almost always clear to a whole bunch of things and has been clear forever. You have basic bodily health. If you were born healthy and you are relatively healthy, you have basic bodily health. So notwithstanding crises of one kind or another, your body is just going to chug on from year to year until you reach your 70s, at which point your basic bodily health will start to break down. Okay, we'll leave the 70s out, and we'll just start with the whole of your body, the whole of your basic bodily health years. People have looked at that forever, since Hippocrates, since Galen, since Aristotle. They've looked at that and said, and complained about it, and said, if only there were a hack of some kind. And forever, long before there was anything like medical science, medically trained individuals would say to them, eat right and exercise. You do those two things, and absent any outside catastrophe, you do those two things, and your bodily health will be just fine until your 70s, at which point you can mitigate from that point out. But from that point out, it's a downhill battle. But until then, eat right and exercise. No. Oh, no. It's more complex. It's not more complicated than that. It's more complex than that. Oh, no. Hippocrates, Galen, doctors in the Middle Ages, doctors in the Renaissance, Bones McCoy in the 23rd century. Immortality? Poppycock. I do more for you if you eat right and exercise. Eat right and exercise. Eat real food in moderation and make sure you move your body. The only reason people say, oh, no, come on, Grandpa, that might have been good in, the 1910s, but it's not good now, is because they're looking for a hack. They don't want to do the thing that will get the result they want. Same thing with losing weight. How many fad diets are there out there? There must be a million of them. There must be a million fad diets. All designed as hacks. They are all designed to give someone a magic key because the person knows the simple answer. The simple answer has been known since Paleolithic times. If you want to lose weight, your body must be in a caloric deficit. Simple as that. If you want to lose weight, if you want to lose fat, you have to be taking in less food than you're burning. And that's unpleasant. So people look for hacks. Oh, I've heard that Dr. Pritkins. Oh, what about the Nantucket? Oh, no. Your body needs to be in a caloric deficit, which means if you want to lose weight, you're going to have to be hungry. And no one likes that. No one wants that as a basic answer. So they look for hacks because the simple answer is right in front of them. But they don't want it. They don't want the simple answer. Same thing is true, you name it, across the board. Why are all my relationships unhealthy? Do you respect the other person? Oh, come on. Okay, all right. Well, the only thing that qualifies as the wisdom with a capital W of the ancients with a capital A are all of these basic things. They are none of them even as long as one sentence. They're simple because they work. The reason this advice never changes is because it works and nothing else does. Everything else is a hack or a fad. All the way across the board, all the way across the board. The answers to these things, absent outside catastrophes, are pretty simple. The same thing is true when it comes to how to read more. The basic thing about how to read more isn't even half a sentence. It's simply one word. It's simply one term. And people hate it in the 21st century more than ever. And that term is self-control. People hate that. Oh, no. Come on. Anything but that. Is there an app? Is there a hack of some kind? Is there a guru who really understands this sort of thing? Is there a TED Talk I can listen to? Nope. Nope. The answer is self-control. That is what lurks behind all four of the quality of the steps that I'm mentioning in this video. You have to prioritize reading. You have to make time in your day to do it. And it has to be regular. If it's not regular, it's not going to be a habit, so it's worthless. Anybody can read a paragraph or two in a month if they need to. Anybody can do that. No, you have to make time in your life to read. You have to eliminate distractions. Most people can't read well if they're surrounded by distractions. Once upon a time, that was easy for me to say. Now it's not hard. It's not easy to say because we are all so deeply connected to all of this addictive smart technology, but it has to go. I had the solution to addictive smart technology before addictive smart technology existed forever and ever. For 275,000 years, I have been stopping everything at midnight and reading all night long. In the pre-technological era, that meant unplug the radio and unplug the phone so that I am literally cocooned in my room and no one can reach me except to knock at the door. And just plug them back in the morning and no one's going to need me, no one's going to want me, no distractions. Most of you sleep all night long. But during the day, you could eliminate distractions. You could carve out the time. Number one goes with number two. You could, when you've carved out the time, you could make sure it's distraction free. If it's a particular room for a particular hour, don't bring your cell phone into that room. Just don't do it. If you're somehow so important, the Pope and General Patton roll into one, that you have to leave your notifications on, you don't want your machines training you. You train them, not the other way around. But if you can't turn them off, if you think you're that important, leave it in the other room. Go somewhere when you are reading and leave it away. And if you try this and you go to the quiet, distraction-free room that you've set aside for the hour of reading that you're going to do today, and the cell phone's in the other room and it's all you can think about, you are addicted. You have an addiction. That's an important thing to fix. That is bad. That is very, very bad. Addictions are very, very bad. If that's what you notice, I've said this before many times in videos, can you go an hour without checking your smartphone? Can you go an hour without doing that? I'm talking about all day. I'm talking about an hour. If you can't go an hour, you have a much bigger problem than reading more. You have an addiction, a serious addiction. You need to get rid of it because of self-control. Self-control is inimical to addiction. And then there's the fourth thing, which is to stop sub-vocalizing. It's a ball and chain you're carrying around when you're reading. It's, of course, going to decrease how much you can get done. With the important caveat right next to that, which is that if you don't want to do more reading, then don't worry about sub-vocalizing. It's only if you want to do it. Well, there's no hack here. There's no magic trick here. It has to go. If you want to read more, it has to go. Unless the time that you carve for reading is 12 hours a day. Most people don't have that. So there you go. This is a very, very simple subject. It's actually very simple, just like most of these subjects are. Most subjects like this are very simple. I want to exercise more. Okay. Do you ever exercise? No. No, I don't. Well, that's your problem right there. I want to build a wooden boat. I want to get good at Latin. Do you devote time to it every day? Do you set aside distraction-free time to do it every day? No, I don't. Well, okay. Do you want to write? Okay. Do you do it every day? No. No, I don't. Then you need to control yourself and make the time to do the thing you want. Stressing here to finish up, I didn't think this would go to 30 minutes, but stressing here to finish up that it is not going to do itself. Nothing that you want is going to happen on its own, just organically. That isn't how life works, and you know that. So, if you want to read more, those 4 steps will do it. There you go. Simple answer. You could just refer back to this video whenever you see some grifter mountebank give you a hack. Thank you, BookTube.